A lonely millionaire discovered a homeless girl and decided to take her home to raise her. Days later, a man collapsed in court when he discovered he had... What is the secret behind this millionaire's tears of pain? For a story that's sure to tug at your heartstrings, make sure to hit subscribe so you won't miss what's next. Andrew Stanley strolled through San Diego, California, the cool evening air brushing against him as he took in the quietness of the empty streets. The city had settled into its nighttime calm, the kind of stillness that falls when people retreat to their homes, leaving only the streetlights casting their soft, lonely glow. San Diego's beauty was undeniable, yet for Andrew, it was just another silent, empty stop along his path, a world lacking color, despite all he owned. As he neared a weathered park bench, something unusual caught his attention. Curled up against the metal railing was a small child, her knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around them. She couldn't have been more than 6, her face pale, her clothes worn and dusty, and her dark, curly hair tangled. She shivered, and Andrew felt a pang in his heart, a rare feeling, one that had been absent for a long time. He kneeled beside her, his voice soft. "Hey there, what are you doing out here all by yourself?" The girl looked up, startled, and he noticed the faint trace of fear flickering in her eyes. But something in his tone seemed to ease her, and she whispered, so faintly he almost missed it. I don't have anywhere to go." He swallowed, a wave of anger and sadness welling up at the thought of a child left to fend for herself on the streets. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. "They left me," she replied, her voice cracking. "They didn't want me anymore." A deep sadness filled him, her loneliness strangely mirroring his own. He had been on his own for what felt like forever. But this was different. Here was a child, completely abandoned. Without a moment's hesitation, he extended his hand. "Would you like to come with me?" he offered, his voice calm. "I have a place where you'll be safe, with a warm bed and food too." She stared at his outstretched hand for a moment, her small face filled with a wary caution beyond her years. But then, slowly, with visible hesitation, she reached out and clasped his hand. Her tiny fingers wrapped around his, and together they walked through San Diego's quiet streets toward his grand but silent mansion. When they stepped into the house, the expansive entryway seemed to engulf them in a quiet stillness. Andrew guided her to a cozy room with a small bed layered in soft blankets. She gazed around, her eyes wide with awe, as if a place like this was beyond her imagination. He handed her a bowl of warm soup, and she ate with the kind of quiet urgency that revealed she hadn't eaten well in days. "What's your name?" he asked gently, watching her sip the soup with care. "Claire," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Claire." "Well, Claire, you're safe here," he told her, his tone both kind and reassuring. "No one will ever harm you here. This is your home." For the first time since they'd met, he caught a faint hint of a smile on her face, though it quickly faded, replaced by a sadness too heavy for someone so young to carry. In the following days, Andrew began to glimpse the depth of Claire's pain. She rarely mentioned her parents, but the few details she shared painted a heartbreaking picture. They had left her, she explained, because she was sick. Andrew couldn't wrap his head around it. How could anyone leave their own child just because of an illness? He was determined to find out more and help her, whatever it took. He arranged for a doctor to visit, hoping to get some answers. But Claire grew terrified, clinging tightly to his sleeve as the doctor approached. "Please don't let them take me," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I don't want to go back. They didn't love me." Her words hit him harder than he had anticipated. "Claire," he said, kneeling so that they were eye level. "No one will take you away. I promise." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting both a glimmer of hope and a shadow of doubt, as though she wanted to believe him but couldn't quite allow herself to trust just yet. Over time, however, she began to open up, slowly sharing bits and pieces of her story with him. She shared the little things with him, the nights she'd gaze at stars peeking through a crack in her ceiling, or the soothing rhythm of rain against her window when she was all by herself. One evening, as he tucked her into bed, she asked in a soft, hesitant voice, "Why did they leave me? Was I too much of a burden?" The question caught Andrew off guard, and he felt a tightness in his chest. He had no answers for her, just the silent ache that settled deeper with each of her questions. How could anyone see this child and not recognize the rare gift she was? He held her hand until she drifted into sleep, silently promising to make things right. A few days later, his search finally turned up something, a lead, an address linked to her family, along with a disturbing report. Her parents, it seemed, had believed she suffered from an illness they thought would be incurable, one that would drain them emotionally and financially, a burden, as they'd called it. But Andrew couldn't accept this explanation. He needed the truth. He arranged a consultation with a medical specialist to determine if this illness was real. Yet, as he waited outside Claire's room that evening, a chill ran through him. The house was silent, almost too quiet, as if bracing for something unknown. And that night, a dark thought hovered in the back of his mind. Had her family really abandoned her over a mere misunderstanding? The morning sun filtered softly into Andrew's grand mansion, illuminating the room where Claire sat, her legs swinging from a tall chair, staring quietly out the window. Watching her from the doorway, Andrew felt the weight of what he'd uncovered the night before. Her parents' abandonment haunted him, but a faint glimmer of hope still lingered within. Maybe, just maybe, they'd acted out of fear, not cruelty. Perhaps if they knew better, they might care for her after all. Steeling himself, he reached out to old acquaintances, family friends, or anyone who might have known Claire's parents or could help locate them. Over the next few days, he made call after call, explaining Claire's story, hoping for assistance. But the responses he received were chillingly detached, laced with judgment and gossip about her past. Some were blunt, saying Claire had simply been too much for her family. Some people suggested the girl was unlucky, even going as far as to warn that Andrew, a reputable businessman, shouldn't get mixed up in another family's troubles. The harsh comments weighed on him, but they only fueled his resolve. Every refusal to see Claire's worth ignited a fierce protectiveness within him. One afternoon, Andrew made one last call to a distant relative of Claire's parents, a woman named Rebecca. He remembered her as a warm, motherly figure, and he hoped she might offer some kindness, or at least a bit of understanding. As the phone rang, he waited, and soon a voice, soft but wary, answered. "Hello, Rebecca, it's Andrew Stanley," he began, keeping his tone gentle yet firm. "I wanted to ask if you knew anything about Claire. She's with me now and she needs support. I thought you'd want to know." There was a pause before Rebecca's voice returned, unexpectedly bitter. "Claire's parents did what they thought was best, Andrew. That girl, she's better off where she is. They couldn't care for her, and honestly, neither can you. Just let her go." Andrew felt the sting of her words, but tried to respond, only for Rebecca to interrupt, her voice sharper than he'd ever heard it. "She's a burden, Andrew. Sometimes letting go is the only option." With a cold click, the line disconnected, leaving Andrew staring at the phone, stunned. The word burden echoed in his mind. How could anyone see a child that way? That evening, he found Claire alone in the expansive library, her small frame nearly lost in the towering rows of books. She was intently reading an old, worn book she'd found on a lower shelf. He sat beside her, the silence heavy. She looked up, her large brown eyes filled with both hope and sadness. "Did you find anyone?" she asked softly, clutching the book close. Andrew hesitated, not wanting to hurt her, but he couldn't bring himself to lie. "No, Claire, not yet. But I'm still trying." Her shoulders slumped, and she let out a soft, shaking sigh. Maybe they really don't want me," she murmured, looking down at the book, tracing its edges with her fingers. "Maybe I'm just a mistake," Claire whispered, her voice filled with a heartbreaking sense of defeat. "No, Claire, don't ever say that," Andrew replied, his voice thick with emotion as he gently pulled her close. She felt so tiny, so vulnerable in his arms, and the weight of her sadness struck him deeply, more than he ever expected. "You are not a mistake, and you're definitely not alone," he assured her. "Not while I'm here." Yet, even as he spoke these words, a pang of uncertainty lingered in his heart. After all, her own family, those meant to love her unconditionally, had pushed her away. In the days that followed, Andrew noticed an unsettling change in Claire. The laughter he'd rarely heard before vanished completely. She became quieter, withdrawing further into herself, as though she were shrinking away from the pain around her. She no longer asked about her family, as if she, too, had finally accepted a painful reality that no child should have to face. One evening, as he stood silently in the doorway of her room, Andrew saw her sitting on the edge of the bed, whispering to herself. He moved closer, trying to catch her words. "I just wanted them to love me," she murmured, her voice so soft it barely filled the room. "Why couldn't they just love me?" A tear traced down her cheek, and Andrew felt a profound ache settle in his heart. He stepped forward slowly, careful not to startle her, until he was right beside her bed. "Claire," he said gently, his voice filled with compassion. "I don't know why they acted the way they did, but I need you to understand that none of this is your fault. Not a single bit." She looked up at him, her face streaked with tears. "But maybe, if I wasn't sick, maybe they wouldn't have left. Maybe I'm just, broken." Andrew kneeled down, reaching for her small hand, holding it warmly in his. "Claire, you're not broken. You're strong, you're brave, and you are worth so much more than they ever saw. Do you hear me?" She nodded slowly, but her eyes still held a sadness too deep for any words to truly reach. In that moment, Andrew knew he would do anything to help her heal, to fill the emptiness with the love she so desperately needed. Yet later that night, as he lay awake, staring into the darkness, a troubling thought crept into his mind. He had tried to reach out to her family, her relatives, anyone who might want to be there for Claire, but every door had remained closed and every heart had stayed cold. Was there more to her story than even she understood? As the hours slipped by, a new determination took root within him. He was determined to uncover why Claire had been left behind, no matter the cost. Deep down, he sensed the truth might be darker than he'd ever imagined. Then, in the early morning silence, the phone rang. The sudden call sliced through the quiet stillness of Andrew's mansion. Startled, he awoke, heart racing, with remnants of his troubled thoughts from the previous night lingering in his mind. Who would be calling at such an hour? He reached for the phone, his voice still heavy with sleep. "Hello?" A firm voice on the other end, softened by a slight southern drawl, responded. "Mr. Whitaker, my name is Dr. Gary Russell. I heard about your situation from a mutual friend. They mentioned you're looking for some help for a young girl." Andrew felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Yes, Dr. Russell, I am. It's about Claire. She's been through so much, and her family thought she was unwell. But I can't seem to find real answers. I'd do anything to help her. Dr. Russell's voice softened, reassuring. Well, it sounds like she's lucky to have you looking out for her. I specialize in cases just like Claire's. Children with unclear or possibly misdiagnosed conditions. I'd be glad to come by, take a look at her, and see what we can figure out together. Relief washed over Andrew like a wave. Finally, someone who might actually help. Someone who didn't respond with judgment or cold indifference. Thank you, Dr. Russell. I can't tell you how much this means, Andrew replied, his gratitude evident. Dr. Russell chuckled lightly. Well, don't thank me just yet, Mr. Whitaker. Let's see if we can help this girl find a new path. I'll be there tomorrow morning. The next day, Dr. Russell arrived at the mansion. A tall, impeccably dressed man with neatly combed silver hair, his warm smile and calming presence immediately put both Andrew and Claire at ease. Claire allowed him to examine her, though she held Andrew's hand tightly the entire time. After hours of discussion and tests, Dr. Russell took Andrew aside, his expression serious but compassionate. Mr. Whitaker, from what I can gather so far, there's a strong chance Claire was misdiagnosed. The symptoms her family feared don't align with anything major. I'll need to conduct more tests to be sure. But Andrew couldn't shake the sense that this little girl was healthier than her family had assumed. A deep relief washed over him, releasing the tension of countless nights spent wondering if her parents had any justification for leaving her. That weight was finally lifting. Thank you, Doctor, he murmured, his voice filled with emotion, but Dr. Russell remained unsmiling. Mr. Whitaker, Dr. Russell began, my evaluations are extensive and will require time. I'd like to see Claire regularly over the next month, if that's agreeable. My services are on the house, he added. Think of it as my contribution. I can see how much you care about her, and I want to be part of her journey. Andrew could hardly believe what he was hearing. A doctor offering his expertise without a fee, just to support Claire. It felt almost unreal, yet Dr. Russell's genuine tone instilled a new hope in Andrew. As the days turned into weeks, Dr. Russell continued his visits to the house, bonding with Claire, running his tests, and earning her trust. Claire seemed to open up, smiling more often, even letting out a soft laugh when he cracked a joke. She began looking forward to his visits, seeing them as bright spots in her routine. But over time, Andrew started to notice peculiarities, small things that didn't quite add up in Dr. Russell notes, expenses that seemed out of place. One day, he caught a snippet of Dr. Russell's hushed phone conversation, words like compensation and confidential fees, barely audible but unsettling. A hint of unease took root in Andrew's mind. One evening, as Dr. Russell was about to leave, Andrew pulled him aside. Doctor, can I have a word? I've noticed some irregularities in the paperwork, extra charges for procedures we never discussed. Dr. Russell's expression tightened briefly, a flicker of impatience breaking through his usually calm facade. Andrew, let's not get bogged down in the details. What matters here is Claire's health, right? But you assured me there'd be no charge, Andrew replied, his tone firm. I want to trust your intentions, but I need to protect her. Dr. Russell let out a chuckle, though the warmth had left his gaze. Andrew, I thought you'd understand. Children like Claire, they come with unique challenges. And remember, you came to me. If there are additional costs, consider it part of the package. For a man in your position, that shouldn't be a problem. Andrew felt a knot of unease twisting in his gut. Dr. Russell's words, carried a chilling undertone, and the calculating gleam in his eyes was unmistakable. He had put his trust in this man, and worse, he had encouraged Claire to do the same. In a steady, firm voice, Andrew said, "I don't think we'll be needing your services any longer." A shadow of irritation crossed Dr. Russell's face. "Very well," he replied. "But remember, I was your best choice for her care. Let's hope no unfortunate incidents affect her health." With that ominous warning, he turned and left, leaving Andrew standing in the echoing entryway, tension filling the space. Andrew's thoughts spun wildly, his heart pounding with a fierce protectiveness he hadn't felt in ages. How could he have missed the signs? That night, he watched Claire as she drifted off to sleep, her small face peaceful, yet shadowed by the grief she bore. He knew he had let her down, allowing someone to betray her trust and exploit her vulnerability. Now, it felt like her already delicate spirit had suffered yet another blow. Sitting by her bedside, Andrew made a silent vow. He would never again let anyone get close enough to harm her. He would zealously protect her and work to ease the suffering she had endured as a result of their wrongdoing. Yet even as he sat there resolute, he couldn't shake the cold dread in his spine. The memory of Dr. Russell's gaze and his veiled threats lingered ominously. A heavy realization settled over Andrew. Their troubles might only be beginning, and perhaps they would have to face even darker challenges than he could have ever imagined. In the days that followed Dr. Russell's departure, an intense silence took hold. Andrew found himself haunted by memories of the doctor's chilling threats and the unsettling look in his eyes. He couldn't escape the sense that they had narrowly evaded something dangerous. But at what cost? Claire, his sweet Claire, had looked to the doctor as a beacon of hope. Now that trust was shattered, leaving her with another scar to bear. Andrew channeled his energy into turning the mansion into a sanctuary for her. He filled her days with small comforts, reading by the fire, strolling through the serene grounds, even letting her choose new flowers for the garden. Yet despite his efforts, Claire grew quieter, her gaze often distant. She occasionally stood by the window, the sunlight framing her as she stared out, seemingly waiting for something or someone who would never arrive. One brisk fall afternoon, Andrew decided they needed a break from the mansion. He hoped a change of pace might help lift the weight that had settled over them. He brought her to a quaint toy store in town, a cozy place filled with bright dolls, stuffed animals, and endless delightful treasures. Claire wandered down each aisle, her fingers brushing the toys, and for the first time in days, a slight smile crossed her lips. Andrew felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this small outing was just what she needed. "Do you like this one?" he asked, holding up a teddy bear wearing a tiny blue sweater. Claire nodded, taking the bear in her arms, her smile widening as she cuddled it close. "He's perfect," she whispered, her voice filled with a gentle warmth that touched Andrew's heart. As they left the store, Claire clutching the bear tightly, Andrew felt an unexpected lightness. For a moment, it felt like the shadows hanging over them had started to lift. They strolled through San Diego's busy streets, with Claire's eyes widening at the sights and sounds, her small hand secure in his. But as they neared the mansion, an uneasy feeling crept over Andrew. Something didn't sit right. Outside the gate, he spotted a sleek black car, and standing beside it was a man in a sharp suit. The man's face was set with a stern, unwavering expression. As they approached, his cold gaze locked onto them. "Mr. Stanley," he said, stepping forward. His tone was smooth. Too smooth, like a razor's edge. "My name is Mr. Ford. I represent Claire's parents." Andrew froze, a wave of protectiveness sweeping over him. "Her parents?" he echoed, his voice stealing. "They left her. Why are you here?" Mr. Ford's face didn't change. "It seems you may not fully understand the situation, Mr. Stanley. Claire's parents have re-evaluated certain elements of their decision. They're willing to reach an arrangement with you. Let me guess, if I pay?" Andrew clenched his fists, his voice taut with restrained anger. "So, they're asking for money to let her stay here? Is that it?" Mr. Ford offered a faint smile, void of warmth. "Yes, they're open to discussing terms. They realize Claire has become attached to you, and they're prepared to relinquish custody for the right financial arrangement." Claire's grip on Andrew's hand tightened, her wide, fearful eyes looking up at him. "Andrew, what's going on? Who is this man?" Claire's voice trembled as she looked to him, searching for reassurance. Andrew kneeled beside her, his words gentle, though his insides seethed. "It's okay, Claire. No one is going to take you anywhere." He shifted his gaze to Mr. Ford, his stare cold and unyielding. "You can tell her parents that when they left her, they forfeited any right to come back for her." The smile on Mr. Ford's face disappeared. He stepped closer, his tone low and threatening. "I'd advise you to think this over, Mr. Stanley. Her parents are fully within their rights to claim her. And believe me, a legal fight won't go well for you or for the girl." With that, he pressed a small envelope into Andrew's hand, his expression chillingly detached. "Our terms are inside. You have until week's end." Andrew stood frozen as Mr. Ford walked back to his car, the engine purring softly before the sleek vehicle glided down the street and out of sight. The envelope felt heavy in his hand, not just with demands, but with a grim promise of what might come. Inside, Claire hugged her new bear tightly, her small hands clutching it as she looked up at him, worry filling her eyes. Are they going to take me, Andrew?" she asked, her voice faint. He knelt in front of her, his heart breaking at the fear written across her innocent face. "No, Claire, no one is going to take you away. I promise. You're safe here." But as he tore open the envelope and scanned the demands, a sick feeling twisted in his stomach. Claire's parents were asking for an enormous amount, a sum so vast that even he, with all his resources, would struggle to meet it. If he couldn't, they threatened to take her back, to pull her from the only place she had ever felt safe. In the days that followed, Andrew was plagued by nightmares, visions of Claire's tiny hand slipping from his, her tear-streaked face as strangers dragged her away. The fear consumed him, leaving him restless and desperate. He spent sleepless nights poring over legal options, making frantic calls to lawyers, searching for any way to keep Claire safe without caving to her parents' demands. But every response remained unchanged. Legally, they still had the right to take her back. Andrew's only choice was to concede to their demands, no matter how twisted or cruel they might be. The final evening before his decision was due, he sat alone in his study, staring at the envelope on his desk. He felt as if the walls were closing in, every hope for Claire's future crumbling under the weight of her parents' greed. Finally, he stood and slowly walked down the dim hallway to Claire's room. She was fast asleep, cuddling her new teddy bear, her face peaceful in the soft glow of the nightlight. Kneeling beside her bed, he gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. His heart ached with the deep love and protectiveness that had grown over the months they'd been together. Suddenly Claire stirred, her eyes fluttering open as she looked up at him with a sleepy smile. "Andrew, are you all right?" "Yes, sweetheart," he whispered, though his voice shook. "I just wanted to check on you." She reached out, her tiny fingers wrapping around his hand. "I'm okay, as long as you're here." In that moment, a fierce determination filled him. He would do whatever it took to protect her. He would shield her from those who had hurt her, from those who saw her as nothing but a pawn. But as he sat beside her, holding her small hand, a thought struck him hard. What if, after everything he'd done, Claire's parents still managed to take her away? The thought was too dark, too painful to consider, and he knew with chilling certainty that they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. Morning light filled the mansion with a warm glow, but it brought him no peace. The ultimatum from Claire's parents loomed like a storm cloud, threatening to destroy everything he'd built with her. In the solitude of his study, he reviewed the demands in the envelope, the coldly typed words that placed a price on a young girl's life, her happiness, her safety. But he couldn't surrender. Giving in would only strengthen their cruel hold over her. He needed a different way to protect Claire from a future filled with exploitation and heartache. Just as despair began to weigh him down, an unexpected call came from Michelle Crawford, a retired judge who had long championed children's rights. She had known Andrew for years, and though they had grown apart, she had once been a trusted confidant. As he explained the situation, her voice on the other end remained steady. "Andrew," she said, calm yet firm, "it sounds like you're dealing with people who see Claire as an asset." Her words carried a calm assurance. "I know the law's tricky, but we may have another approach. If we can demonstrate that her parents are unfit, a judge might be willing to transfer custody." A spark of hope lit within Andrew, a sense of direction amidst the uncertainty. "Michelle," he said, his tone determined, "if there's anything at all, that I can do to protect her, I'll do it." Michelle's voice softened. "You'll need solid proof, Andrew. If we can show that Claire's parents are exploiting her, we might have a case." She paused. "I'll reach out to some contacts. In the meantime, document everything. It won't be easy, but you have to be strong for her." Relief washed over him as he ended the call, knowing this was just the start. The fight ahead would be tough, and he had no idea what Claire's parents might attempt. In the days that followed, Andrew dedicated himself to gathering evidence. He pored over financial documents, searching for any hint of her parents' manipulations. He spoke to former neighbors who had witnessed the conditions Claire had endured. With each revelation, his anger simmered. Her parents had neglected her for years, leaving her to struggle on her own, in filth, before completely abandoning her. Now they wanted her back, purely to exploit him for money. The cruelty left him stunned. Meanwhile, Andrew kept Claire's spirits high, keeping her shielded from the legal battles and tense meetings with lawyers. He filled their days with joy, taking her on little excursions around San Diego, exploring the coast, wandering through the old market, and strolling the colorful streets she adored. Her smiles were rare, her laughter soft and tentative, yet every flicker of happiness gave him strength. One evening, after a day at the harbor, Claire turned to him with a question. "Andrew, will I always be able to stay here with you?" Her voice was so small, so hesitant, and her eyes held a vulnerability that pierced him. He knelt beside her, looking her straight in the eyes, steady, despite the doubts weighing on him. "Claire, I will do everything in my power to keep you here. You're safe with me, Claire. Do you believe that?" She nodded slowly, reaching out to grasp his hand. "I do." That simple statement, uttered with the pure trust of a child, only strengthened his determination. He knew he couldn't let her down, but just when he felt they were making progress, Michelle called with unsettling news. "Andrew, things are worse than I initially thought. Claire's parents have hired a high-profile attorney. They're painting you as an overstepping benefactor, claiming you had no legal right to take her in. They say they left her in your care temporarily, and allege you're refusing to return her." Andrew felt his pulse race, a mix of anger and fear tightening in his chest. They left her with nothing, Michelle. They haven't shown a trace of love or care. I know, Andrew, Michelle replied, her voice weighed down with empathy. But the court might see this as a custody dispute, and unless we can disprove their story or prove their neglect outright, they could twist things to look like you're holding her against their wishes. You need to prepare yourself for this. Andrew felt hollow, like he'd been struck in the gut. How could the system even entertain the idea of giving her back to the very people who had abandoned her? He'd thought money might make her parents go away, but now it seemed they wanted to make him pay for daring to care for her. That night he lay awake, wondering if he'd ever be able to truly keep Claire safe. By morning, he knew he had to tell her, as painful as it was. He found her in the sunroom, her little bear in her arms, gazing out at the garden with a serene expression. He sat down next to her, his voice gentle. Claire, there's something I need to tell you. She turned to him, a crease of worry forming on her forehead. What is it, Andrew? He took a deep breath, letting the weight of the words settle. Your parents. They're trying to take you back. They've gone to court to make it happen. But I'm fighting for you, Claire. I'm doing everything I can to keep you here. A flicker of fear crossed her face as she hugged her bear closer. Do I have to go with them? She asked, her voice small. No, Claire, he said firmly, his voice full of resolve. I won't let them take you, I promise. But even as he spoke, he could see a shadow of doubt lingering in her eyes. She'd been let down before, and he understood that empty promises wouldn't be enough to make her trust in his protection. As the days passed, the court battle intensified. Andrew spent countless hours strategizing with lawyers, preparing their defense. Yet, each day brought a fresh setback. Claire's parents filed a barrage of accusations, alleging that Andrew had isolated her, exceeded his role, and was even mentally unfit to care for her. The situation felt like an endless nightmare, a suffocating tunnel closing in tighter with each step. As the final court date loomed, warnings from others hinted that the odds were against them. Sitting in the vast empty courtroom on the day of the last hearing, he glanced over at Claire, her small hand clasping his, her face pale with anxiety. The judge entered, her face stern and unreadable. Andrew took a steadying breath, silently pleading for compassion, for understanding. As proceedings began, Claire's parents presented themselves as repentant, transformed individuals. They claimed they'd left her only out of a belief it was best for her. Tears flowed as they pledged to be the parents she deserved, given a second chance. Andrew's heart raced as he waited for his lawyer to present their side of the story, to recount Claire's suffering, the neglect, and the cruelty that had marred her past, before she found safety with him. Yet, the judge's face remained impassive, her decision cloaked in the formalities of the process. Hours dragged on, each one heavier than the last, until finally she rose to deliver her judgment. The evidence presented has been thoroughly reviewed, she began in a calm, detached tone. Claire's well-being and best interests are paramount in this decision. Andrew held his breath, squeezing Claire's hand tightly, clinging to hope. But the judge's verdict landed like a crushing blow. Until further investigation can be conducted, custody will remain with her biological parents. Effective immediately. The world crumbled as Claire gasped, clutching his arm in despair. No, Andrew! Please don't let them take me. But the guards were already stepping forward. Her parents' smug expressions spoke of victory as they reached to reclaim her hand. Claire's heart-wrenching cries echoed through the room as she was pulled from his side, her tear-streaked face desperate. Andrew, she called, her hands slipping from his grasp. Don't leave me. He fought to push forward, but her voice was already fading. But the guards restrained him, their grip unyielding. He could only stand by, helpless, as Claire was escorted away, her small figure swallowed by the shadows at the far end of the hall. Her cries faded, leaving a haunting silence. As the courtroom cleared, Andrew collapsed into a chair, his heart in pieces, his mind numb. He had let down the only child he'd ever cherished. As he sat there, with darkness pressing in, he realized his life would be forever changed without her. The silence was suffocating, filled only by the faint echo of her final, desperate call. Days bled into weeks. Andrew drifted deeper into a darkness he'd never known. The mansion felt colder, empty, each trace of Claire's presence erased. Her laughter, her light footsteps, her scattered little possessions, all gone, leaving only the sharp sting of her absence in every corner. He couldn't even step into the garden without picturing her, skipping between flowers as if each was a precious gem. Every inch of the house seemed haunted by her memory. One late afternoon, as he sat alone in his study, bourbon untouched in hand, a soft knock broke through his fog of grief. He rose slowly, weighed down by sorrow, and opened the door. There stood a familiar face from his past. Raymond Kennedy, an old friend and business associate he hadn't seen in years. "Andrew," Raymond said, his voice warm and full of compassion, "I heard what happened, and I had to come check on you. Old friend." Andrew felt a surge of emotions, surprise, a hint of relief, maybe even a spark of hope. It had been years since he and Raymond had been close, but now a familiar face with genuine concern offered a comfort he hadn't known he needed. "Raymond," Andrew replied, managing a weak smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's been a long time. I wasn't expecting anyone." Raymond stepped inside, taking in Andrew's weary appearance with a gentle, understanding look. "I can see that," he said softly. "Why don't you tell me everything? Maybe I can help." For the next hour, Andrew shared it all. The night he found Claire, the precious fleeting months he'd spent with her, and the heartbreaking courtroom scene that had torn her away. He spoke of his pain, his helplessness, and the desperate steps he had taken to try and protect her, only to lose her to the very people who had hurt her the most. Raymond listened in silence, his expression somber, nodding thoughtfully as Andrew shared his story. There was an unreadable glint in Raymond's eyes, something that hinted at deeper thoughts. When Andrew finally finished, his voice rough and his spirit worn thin, Raymond leaned closer, resting a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Andrew," he said, his voice gentle yet firm, "you did everything possible. But maybe, just maybe, there's still a chance to bring Claire back." Andrew looked up, startled, a spark of hope flashing in his eyes, despite his attempts to hold it back. "What are you saying? The court order, it's final. I've got no options left. They took her, Raymond. I couldn't keep her safe." Raymond's gaze was focused, almost calculating, as he carefully selected his next words. "Andrew, there's always a way. Sometimes you have to go around the law, not through it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Think about it. You've got resources and connections. We both know people who might help us find another way." A chill went down Andrew's spine as he realized what Raymond was suggesting. "Are you saying I should take her back? By force?" Raymond's eyes flashed with a dark intensity, his gaze cutting sharply through the dim light of the room. "She's your daughter, Andrew, in every sense that matters. You love her. You've cared for her. Don't let a piece of paper keep you from doing what's right." Andrew hesitated, torn between the thought of saving Claire and the risks involved. The idea of bringing her back, of giving her the safety and love she deserved, was everything he'd wished for. But was he truly ready to defy the law, to endanger her well-being, by taking such a bold step? The thought shook him, but images of her tear-streaked face and her desperate cries for him in the courtroom flooded his mind, tugging at his heart. "I don't know," Andrew faltered, his voice quivering with doubt. "If anything happened to her, I don't think I could live with myself." Raymond's expression softened, his tone gentle yet persuasive. "Andrew, she's suffering there. They don't love her. They don't even want her. All they care about is what they can get from you. Think about it. How much longer can she go on like this? This might be your only chance to make things right." A surge of determination mixed with fear rose within Andrew. He had failed her once. He couldn't bear the thought of letting her down again. His gaze shifted to Raymond, who met his eyes with an intense, unbroken stare, a wordless push to make the choice that could alter everything. "All right," Andrew murmured, his voice barely audible. "I'll do it. I'll bring her back. But we need to be cautious. If anything goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong," Raymond cut in, giving a small, reassuring smile. "Trust me." In the days that followed, they set their plan in motion. Raymond tapped into his network, calling in favors from people Andrew had only heard of in passing. He promised Andrew everything would go off without a hitch and that Claire would be back in his arms soon. But as they inched closer to their goal, Andrew began noticing subtle shifts in Raymond's behavior, a steely coldness in his eyes, a clipped edge to his words. It seemed as if each step of the process made Raymond increasingly ruthless, more willing to blur lines for his own ends. Then, one evening, just as they were finalizing the last details, Andrew's phone buzzed with a message. It was from a private investigator he'd hired shortly after Claire went missing. The information in the message hit Andrew like a punch to the gut. The report exposed Raymond's deep financial woes, mounting debts, and a history of exploiting vulnerable people. Andrew's heart pounded as he looked up from his phone, dread settling heavily over him. Raymond had been so enthusiastic, so ready to jump in and help, but now, with the truth staring him in the face, Andrew could see that Raymond's intentions might not have been as noble as he'd claimed. "Raymond," Andrew said, his voice steady yet icy, "I need to know the real reason you're helping me. Is this about Claire, or is it about you?" Raymond's eyes darkened, a flicker of annoyance flashing across his face. "Andrew, what's this nonsense? I told you, I'm here to help you, and her." "Then explain this," Andrew replied, showing him the message with hands trembling in anger. "Explain the debts and the lengths you're willing to go. Is Claire just some twisted payday for you? Are you expecting a cut of what her parents offered?" For a second, anger flashed across Raymond's face, but he quickly masked it with an expression of forced calm. "Andrew, I've been nothing but truthful with you. Yes, I've got debts, but that doesn't mean I'm not loyal. You're my friend." Andrew's heart ached as he watched the pain in front of him, wanting desperately to step in and offer help. "Don't let your suspicions tear this apart," he urged, feeling the sting of betrayal as it clawed its way through his chest. "You're right, Raymond. I let my guard down," he admitted, his voice heavy. "I trusted you. I thought you cared about all of this, but you're manipulating her, just like her parents did." Raymond's face hardened, his expression becoming cold and calculating. "Fine, if that's where you stand, Andrew," he replied. "But let's be honest, without me, you have no chance of getting her back. Think it through before you throw this all away." The room hung heavy with silence as they glared at each other, locked in a standoff. Finally, Andrew broke the silence, his voice laced with firm resolve. "I don't need you, Raymond. I don't have to sink to your level to keep her safe." Raymond's sneer twisted into a dark smile. "You're making a huge mistake, Andrew. One you'll regret." He turned sharply, leaving Andrew alone, a weight settling in his chest, filled with both sorrow and a strange sense of relief. Realizing that Raymond, his longtime friend, had taken advantage of his vulnerability was a bitter truth to face. But as he stood there, Andrew felt a flicker of something else, a renewed determination. He didn't need to drag Claire back by force. He'd find another way, one that didn't risk her safety or compromise who he was. His future was unclear, and he faced LNG odds. Yet thinking of Claire, he knew he couldn't just give up. He would continue to fight for her, and he would do it the right way. Taking a steady breath, he reached for his phone and dialed Michelle Crawford. "Michelle," he said, his voice strong and certain. "I need your help. I can't give up on Claire." Days turned into weeks after that bitter standoff with Raymond, each one feeling heavier than the last as he wandered alone through the vast, empty mansion. Betrayed by his oldest friend, his plans to bring Claire back shattered. Andrew's grief and anger filled the silence around him. However, the love he had for her kept him committed to his objective. Even though his path was murky and obstacles crowded his every move, the cold indifference of strangers, countless legal hurdles, and a justice system that seemed intent on blocking his way, he knew he couldn't abandon the girl he cherished like a daughter. Each time Andrew tried to find out about Claire's well-being or her current living situation, he was stonewalled. Officials would respond with vague, unhelpful replies, claiming they were simply following protocol. Finally, one afternoon, he got a call from Michelle Crawford. Her tone was softer, almost resigned, something he'd never heard from her before. "Andrew," she began gently, "I've tried everything I can to push for your case, but without clear evidence of immediate harm, the court isn't inclined to consider removing Claire from her parents' care. They're convinced she's stable with them." Andrew felt his stomach knot up. "Stable? Michelle, you know what they're like. You know what they've done to her." "I know, Andrew," she answered quietly. "But the court needs concrete proof. And right now, they're interpreting your bond with her as emotional attachment. They believe your judgment might be more about feelings than about her best interests." The words stung deeply. Each felt like a cut to the heart. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. His love and worry for Claire, what drove him to try to protect her, was now being turned against him. Clenching the phone tightly, his knuckles pale, he asked, "So what am I supposed to do, Michelle? Just leave her with people who treat her like she's nothing but a bargaining chip?" There was a heavy pause. Finally, Michelle spoke, her words filled with regret. "I don't know, Andrew. I wish I had better news. But for now, we've run out of options." After the call ended, Andrew stood alone in his study, feeling more isolated than ever. The mansion, once filled with Claire's laughter, her small footsteps, now felt cold and empty, like a prison. No matter what he did, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd failed her. That night he sat by the window, gazing out at the deserted garden where Claire had once played. He could still picture her laughing, twirling through the flowers they'd planted together. Closing his eyes, he remembered her gentle, soft voice and those trusting brown eyes looking up at him. Just as sleep began to creep in, a sound shattered the silence, a quiet knock at the front door, so faint he almost thought he'd imagined it. His heart racing, he hurried to the door, daring to hope that, impossibly, it might be Claire. But when he opened it, he found a stranger standing there. The man, tall and lean with a worn expression and cautious eyes, appeared as if life had taken him down a hard road. He wore a faded frayed coat, and under his arm was a battered notebook. "Mr. Stanley?" he asked, his voice low but unwavering. "Yes," Andrew answered, eyeing the man carefully. "My name is Logan Garcia," the stranger introduced himself, his tone carrying a certain urgency that stirred Andrew's curiosity. "I believe I have some information about Claire." Andrew's pulse quickened, and he gestured for Logan to step inside. They sat, and Logan opened his notebook, flipping through pages filled with messy notes, addresses, and phone numbers. His hands trembled slightly, as if he was carrying a weight too heavy to bear alone. "I used to be a caseworker," Logan began, his voice tinged with sorrow. "I worked with kids like Claire, children dealing with neglect and abandonment. I had files on her family years ago, but something went wrong. Her parents slipped through the cracks. She slipped through the cracks," he said. Andrew leaned in, his voice steady but tense. "Are you telling me the system failed her? That they ignored her?" Logan's face grew tight, and he nodded slowly. "Yes, it happens more than you'd think. I left because of cases like hers, but recently I couldn't stop thinking about her. I started digging into her family's background, hoping to find something, anything, that might help." He pointed to a line in the notebook. "Her parents are in serious financial trouble, Andrew. That's why they're holding on to her. She's an asset to them, a means of getting money." He paused, the words seemingly too bitter to say aloud. "What is it, Logan?" Andrew urged, his heart pounding. Logan looked away, his voice shaking. "I have reason to believe they're exploiting her for money, not just from you, but from other sources too. Charities, organizations that help families in need. They're manipulating the situation, making themselves out to be loving parents who've hit hard times. And it's working. They've already received thousands." A wave of nausea rolled over Andrew. The cruelty of it was overwhelming. Claire, his dear Claire, was nothing more to them than a way to make money, and the system, the very one that had denied him custody, was letting this happen. "What can we do?" Andrew asked, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and helplessness. "How do we stop this?" Logan looked at him intently, his face somber. "I don't know if there's a direct way," Logan said slowly. "But if you're willing, there might be something we could attempt. I know someone who used to work with child advocacy groups. They can investigate cases of severe neglect, even if it bypasses the court's previous rulings. But it's risky and invasive. They'll dig deep into every part of your life too." Without hesitation, Andrew replied, "I don't care." His voice was steady, full of determination. "If it means I can get Claire away from them, I'll do whatever it takes." The following weeks blurred into a non-stop cycle of paperwork, interviews, and meetings with investigators. Every detail of Andrew's life was scrutinized. Financial records, conversations with Claire, personal matters. Nothing was off limits. The process was exhausting, overwhelming, and even humiliating at times. But he pushed through it, fueled by the hope of bringing Claire home and giving her the life she deserved. As the investigation dragged on, Andrew's days grew heavier. His grand home started to feel like a prison, and the silence gnawed at him, filling him with a growing sense of despair. There were no updates, no word on Claire's situation, only an endless wait that left him restless and filled with dread. One evening, as he sat alone in his quiet study, his phone buzzed. He didn't recognize the number, but he picked it up with a mix of hope and anxiety. "Mr. Stanley," a woman's voice said on the other end. "This is Linda Morales, with the child advocacy group handling Claire's case." Andrew's heart sped up. "Yes, please," he urged. "Tell me you've found something. Tell me she's all right." The sound of papers shuffling followed a brief pause. "Mr. Stanley, we're still compiling evidence. But so far, what we've uncovered is troubling. Claire's living conditions are, to put it mildly, unacceptable. Her parents have a record of neglect, but they've managed to keep her with them by convincing authorities that only they can handle her special needs. Andrew felt a surge of anger burn through him. A fierce, smoldering anger made his voice quiver. So they're just holding her captive to keep milking resources? Yes, Linda answered, her voice solemn. But we're keeping detailed records of everything. It's a slow process, but we're working hard to build a strong case. Mr. Stanley, we need you to hang in there. I know this is hard, but if we want to give her a true shot, we have to be thorough. Andrew thanked her, his heart heavy with frustration and a sense of helplessness. Each day, without Claire, felt like endless suffering. Every day, she remained in a place that saw her only as a means to an end, with no real concern for her well-being. When the call ended, Andrew leaned back in his chair, the silence pressing in. He had faced humiliation, betrayal, and profound loss. But he'd go through it all again if it meant one thing: getting Claire back. Staring into the dimness of his empty mansion, he made a promise. No matter how long or what it cost, he would bring her home. Because Claire wasn't just some child he had taken in, she was family, and he'd never leave her to a life of neglect and exploitation, no matter the price. The days after Andrew's conversation with Linda Morales from the Children's Advocacy Group offered no relief. Time dragged, filled only by silence and growing uncertainty. The emptiness of his home became heavier with each passing hour, each room reminding him of Claire, her sweet voice, her laughter, her unwavering trust in him. Andrew was trapped in regret and despair, feeling utterly powerless to save the person he loved, as if she were his own daughter. Weeks went by, and then, one late evening, Linda called again. Her tone was more serious, more guarded than before. "Mr. Stanley," she started, "we've uncovered something unsettling. It's far more extensive than we initially thought. Claire's parents aren't just exploiting charities or her situation. They've been tapping into multiple sources, individuals, charities, even medical organizations." Andrew's pulse quickened as he took in Linda's words. He could hardly process the depth of deception Claire's parents had woven. She painted a picture steeped in greed, a carefully crafted scheme with Claire at its center, caught in the middle of a heartless plan. Andrew's fists tightened, fury simmering deep within him. Linda went on, "We're gathering the evidence needed for a case, but it's taking longer than expected. There are legal challenges." She paused. "And Mr. Stanley, I need to tell you, her parents are aware of our investigation. They've hired a high-powered legal team, using every tactic possible to cast doubt on our findings. They're trying to paint you as someone who's crossed the line, an obsessed man with suspicious intentions toward Claire." Andrew felt as though he'd been punched. The thought that anyone might think he was anything other than a caring protector to Claire was almost unbearable. He forced himself to speak, though his voice was thick with anger. "Linda, you know that's not true. All I've ever wanted is to give her a life where she's safe, loved, away from people who only see her as a tool for their own gains." "I know, Andrew," Linda replied, her tone gentle and filled with empathy. "But the public only sees what her parents want them to see. They're shaping the story to cast you as the villain. We're working to counter it, but they're moving fast. I just wanted you to be prepared." Andrew thanked her, though his mind spun with disbelief and frustration. The injustice of it was overwhelming. He had opened his heart to Claire, giving her love and protection, only for her parents to twist the truth and portray him as a threat. Despair settled over him, the weight of the situation pressing down with relentless force. That night, sleep was elusive. Andrew lay in bed, mind flooded with memories of Claire and the quiet moments they'd shared. He remembered her trust, the way she'd looked to him for safety. Staring up at the ceiling, he grappled with how things had come to this. How could the world be so merciless? At dawn, just as the first rays seeped through the curtains, a loud knock echoed through the house. Jolted awake, Andrew quickly went to answer the door, his heart racing. Standing there were two men in dark suits, their faces serious. "Mr. Stanley?" one of them asked, flashing a badge. "We're with the State Child Protection Agency. We're here on official business. May we come in?" The words sent a chill down Andrew's spine, but he moved aside, letting them into the mansion. The agents moved with quiet authority, eyes scanning his home with a detached, almost clinical focus. Leading them to the study, Andrew's mind raced, a growing unease filling his chest. One agent spoke, his voice formal and detached. "Mr. Stanley, we've received reports suggesting you may not be suitable to pursue custody of Claire Taylor. Concerns have been raised about potential obsessive behavior and emotional instability. We're here to evaluate the situation and review your home's conditions." Andrew felt the blood drain from his face. Unstable, obsessive. Claire is like my own daughter. I took her in because her parents abandoned her. I've done everything to protect her. The agent's expression remained unyielding. "That may be how you see it, Mr. Stanley, but evidence is mounting, and the court is increasingly worried that your actions could be affecting her emotionally." A surge of desperation rose in Andrew, his voice trembling as he tried to explain, "Her parents only want her for the money and sympathy she brings them. To them, she's just a tool. I'm the only one who truly cares about her well-being." The agent raised a hand to halt him. "We are authorized to conduct a full evaluation of your home and your mental health as part of this investigation. Non-compliance may complicate your case further." Andrew's heart raced as he watched them move around his home, taking notes on every detail, scrutinizing his bookshelves, and even flipping through the photo albums filled with memories he'd carefully preserved of Claire. It felt as if his sanctuary, his private world with Claire, was being dismantled, piece by piece. After what felt like hours, the agents left, their faces giving away nothing. Watching them disappear down the driveway, Andrew felt a crushing weight settle on him. He had allowed them into his home, the space he had fought to make safe for Claire. Now he feared he'd handed them more fuel for their case against him. The days that followed stretched on in agonizing uncertainty. Andrew hadn't heard a word from Linda or the advocacy group. The silence gnawed at him, filling him with unease and doubt. He started to question if the investigation was turning against him, and if the people he once trusted to support him were now viewing him as the opposition. Just as he was on the verge of giving up entirely, his phone buzzed. It was Linda, her voice brimming with urgency. "Andrew, I have news, but it's not good," she said, her tone heavy with regret. "Claire's parents have somehow gained full custody. They've shut down the investigation, pulling every string they could find, using every loophole in the book. They're accusing you of harassment and demanding that you stay away from her." Andrew's vision blurred, his breath caught in his throat. "What, Linda? No, they can't. Claire needs me." Linda's voice softened, pain evident in her words. "I'm so sorry, Andrew. They have influence, and they know how to work the system. We tried everything, but they've blocked every path forward. Right now, any further action risks even more accusations against you." A hollowish filled his chest as his heart shattered all over again. "So that's it. They're keeping her, and there's nothing I can do." Linda paused, then spoke gently, each word cutting deeper. "For now, yes, Andrew. But I believe she'll remember what you did for her. You gave her love and a home. She may be young, but a love like that is hard to forget. After he hung up, Andrew wandered through the empty mansion, the silence around him heavy with loss. Every room echoed with memories of Claire's laughter and of the hope he had once held for justice and for her return. It all felt like it was slipping away. He walked out to the garden they had tended together, with the flowers she had chosen standing out vividly against the darkening sky. He sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the grief and by the knowledge that he hadn't lost her through his own fault, but through the callous actions of those driven by power and wealth. He covered his face, tears slipping through his fingers, his heart in pieces. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he thought he heard a faint sound, a voice, soft and gentle, drifting on the evening breeze. For a moment, he thought it was just his imagination playing tricks on him. The voice was unmistakable. Andrew turned, and for a heart-stopping moment, he thought he saw her, Claire, standing there in the garden. The fading light touched her petite figure, and her eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and tenderness. It was as if she were saying, "Thank you," her voice so faint yet somehow real. But as he reached out, the image faded, leaving him alone with only the quiet of the garden. He remained in the fading light, clutching that last vision of her, that single spark of love he knew he'd hold on to forever. As night fell around him, one truth settled deeply into his heart. No matter what, his love for Claire would endure. It would be a light in the shadows, a quiet hope that someday, somehow, she might find her way back to him. The weeks that followed were bleak and empty. The grand estate, once alive with warmth and laughter, now felt like an empty tomb. Andrew wandered through the vacant halls like a ghost, finding echoes of Claire in every corner. He couldn't shake the guilt that he'd failed her, and the weight of it dulled his senses, draining him of hope. Yet, as the days dragged on, a thought began to nag at him, breaking through his quiet grief. Parts of Claire's story didn't quite make sense, details that had been lost in the chaos of his custody battle. He recalled something Linda had casually mentioned. Claire's parents hadn't just used her for charity, they'd also concealed much of her medical history, hiding key details even in legal records. Driven to know more, Andrew reached out to Logan Garcia, the retired caseworker who had first shared Claire's files with him. They met in a small, dimly lit cafe downtown. Logan's face was heavy with sorrow as he sat across from Andrew. "Logan," Andrew began, his voice steady but urgent, "I need you to tell me everything. Everything you know about Claire's background and her family. All the things I missed before." Logan hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty, but then he nodded, opening a worn folder he'd brought with him. "Andrew, there's something I left out. I didn't think it mattered before, but now I think you should know." Logan handed him an old document, a birth certificate. As Andrew scanned it, he felt his breath hitch. The name listed under father wasn't the man who had claimed her in court. In fact, it wasn't her supposed father at all. Logan took a deep breath and continued. "Andrew, the man you've been in conflict with all this time isn't Claire's biological father. Her mother married him later on, but Claire was born before they ever wed. The court never questioned their story since they presented themselves as her rightful parents. Yet the truth about her parentage was kept hidden." Andrew looked down at the document in his hand, feeling a wave of shock wash over him. This revelation meant that Claire's mother had misled the courts, charitable organizations, and everyone else. The man who had fought so fiercely to gain custody of her, to tear her away from Andrew, had no legal right to claim her. But why go to such lengths to keep this hidden? Andrew asked, his voice shaking with anger and confusion. Logan took a deep breath, his expression somber. Because Claire's real father was from a powerful family. A family that would have the resources and influence to claim her if they found out. If word got out, Claire's mother and her husband would lose everything they had. They kept the truth buried to maintain control and to use Claire as a part of their plans. A fierce determination rose in Andrew as he grasped the weight of this discovery. If he could identify Claire's real family, if he could bring the truth forward, perhaps he could still save her from being manipulated as a pawn. "Do you know who her real father is?" Andrew asked, his tone urgent. Logan nodded slowly and handed him another document, along with an old photograph of a young man bearing a strong resemblance to Claire. Her father was a man named Dylan Jenkins. He passed away years ago, but his family is still in San Diego. The Jenkins are prominent, a family that protects their own. Andrew felt a faint but determined hope. If he could reach the Jenkins and show them the truth, maybe they would intervene and offer Claire a way out of this nightmare. That evening, Andrew resolved to contact the Jenkins. He had heard about them before, a respected Southern family known for their influence and discretion. If anyone could rescue Claire, it would be them. The next day, Andrew found himself at the Jenkins family estate, a sprawling, elegant property set behind ornate iron gates. His heart pounded as he walked the stone pathway up to the grand front entrance, his mind racing with questions and hopes. An older woman opened the door, her gaze sharp and discerning. She introduced herself as Sharon Jenkins, Claire's biological grandmother. Andrew quickly explained his connection to Claire and his urgent reasons for reaching out. As he recounted Claire's life, her abandonment, the ways she had been mistreated, Sharon's face hardened with sorrow and anger. "I knew it. Deep down, I knew she had to be out there," Sharon said, her voice quivering as she pressed a hand to her chest. "But her mother, she never wanted us around. When Dylan passed away, she disappeared. We were left clueless about what happened to the child." Andrew handed her Claire's birth certificate, along with other documents detailing her situation. "She needs you, Mrs. Jenkins. They're taking advantage of her. I tried everything I could, but the system wouldn't help. Please, you're her family. You're her last hope." Determination flickered in Sharon's eyes, and her voice took on a resolute tone. "Andrew, if what you're saying is true, no one, not even her mother, will stop us from bringing her home." In the following days, Andrew felt a new sense of purpose as Sharon and her family initiated a private investigation. They dug into Claire's mother and stepfather's pasts, compiling proof of Claire's true lineage. Through their connections, they secured a swift, discreet court hearing, equipped with undeniable evidence of Claire's heritage. The night before the hearing, Andrew sat alone in his study, a fresh spark of hope igniting within him as he imagined the day he would see Claire, safe and sound, once more. The hearing was brief, yet impactful. The Jenkins presented their case, revealing the extent of the lies told by Claire's mother and stepfather. With each new piece of evidence, the court's trust in Claire's so-called parents eroded until there was nothing left. In a final, conclusive moment, the judge ruled in favor of the Jenkins, granting guardianship of Claire to her biological family and releasing her from the clutches of those who'd hurt her. At last, after months of struggle and heartbreak, Claire was safe. The next morning, Andrew received a message from Sharon, inviting him to visit their estate. He arrived with his heart pounding and received a warm welcome from Sharon, who then led him outside to the garden where Claire was waiting. She sat among the flowers, her face peaceful, a gentle smile lighting her eyes when she saw him. Andrew felt a rush of emotion as he looked at her, tears stinging his eyes as he took in the sight of her, a small, radiant figure framed by sunlit blossoms. She appeared healthier and more joyful, her spirit still resilient. "Andrew!" she exclaimed, running toward him and wrapping her arms around him with such joy it left him breathless. He kneeled down, holding her close, feeling the weight of the past few months lift away. "Oh, Claire, I missed you so much." She pulled back, studying his face with teary eyes. "I knew you'd come for me. I just knew it." Sharon stepped forward, her expression soft as she witnessed their reunion. "Andrew, I can never thank you enough. You saved her. You brought her back to us." Andrew turned to Sharon, his gratitude beyond words. "All I wanted was for her to feel loved and safe. I would have done anything to give her that." Claire tugged at his hand, her eyes shining. "You did, Andrew. You really did." As they sat together in the garden, embraced by the love of Claire's true family, a deep sense of peace settled over Andrew. A peace he hadn't felt in years. He had found Claire, rescued her from the darkness, and now she was finally free. In the days that followed, Andrew became a cherished friend to the Jenkins family, a steady presence in Claire's life. He watched her grow, saw her laughter return, and knew that his difficult journey had led him to the greatest gift he could imagine, Claire's happiness. Sitting beside her, watching her blossom into the joyful, hopeful child she was meant to be, he felt a profound contentment. Claire was finally home, safe, and surrounded by love. His mission was complete. His heart at last felt whole. He knew he'd carry her love with him for the rest of his life, a love that had ultimately redeemed him. As the seasons passed, Andrew watched Claire flourish in her new home's warmth. The Jenkins family embraced her as one of their own, giving her the stability and love she had been missing for so long. For Andrew, it was a bittersweet happiness. He had fought so hard to protect her, but witnessing her thrive made every hardship worthwhile. Claire spent her days surrounded by love, a family who adored her, friends who cherished her, and teachers who admired her resilience and vibrant spirit. She seemed to glow with a light that had once been hidden beneath layers of pain. As her confidence grew, so did her bond with Andrew, who became not only a father figure, but also her closest friend, a trusted confidant, someone she could share all her hopes and fears with. One bright afternoon, Andrew got an invitation from the Jenkins to join them for a gathering in their garden. A celebration, they said, marking Claire's first year with her real family. They wanted him to be there. When he arrived at the estate, Sharon Jenkins greeted him warmly and led him out to the garden, filling his heart with joy. Claire was there, wearing a light yellow dress that glowed in the soft sunlight of the afternoon. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Andrew!" she called, running toward him with arms wide open. He kneeled down to embrace her, holding her close, feeling the warmth and trust that radiated from her. "I missed you, Claire," he whispered, brushing a lock of hair from her face. She grinned, her eyes sparkling. "You see me all the time, silly, but I missed you too." They strolled together through the garden, where tables were set with dainty pastries, fresh lemonade, and vibrant flowers in bloom. Claire led him to a small bench under a grand magnolia tree, her hand in his, her laughter filling the air around them. They sat quietly for a while, watching the guests mingle and children play nearby. "Andrew," Claire spoke softly, breaking the peaceful silence. "Do you remember when you used to read to me every night?" He smiled and nodded. "Of course. You always wanted to hear Goodnight Moon and Charlotte's Web." "Sometimes both," Claire laughed, her laugh sweet and melodic, filling his heart with pride. "I still have those books, you know. I kept them because they remind me of you, and of home." Her words stirred something deep within him, and he took a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Claire, This is your home now. You have a family here who loves you very much. I'll always be here for you. But this is where you belong." Claire looked down, her small fingers tracing patterns on the wooden bench. "I know, but you were the one who saved me. You were the first person who made me feel like I mattered." She paused, her voice wavering just a little. "I'll never forget that, Andrew. You're my family too." Andrew felt his heart swell as he gently rested a hand on Claire's shoulder. "You'll always be family to me, Claire. No matter where life leads, you'll always have a place here with me. You're the daughter I never had, and I'll always be here for you." Claire leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder, and together they sat in the soft sunlight, quietly connected. Words weren't needed to convey the love they shared. It was understood, an unbreakable part of who they were. Around them, the celebration continued, with laughter and music filling the air as family and friends gathered to celebrate the new chapter Claire was beginning. Sharon Jenkins approached them, her gaze warm, as she watched Andrew and Claire. "Andrew," she said gently, "we can never thank you enough for bringing Claire into our lives. You've given her, and us, a new life. She wouldn't be here without you." Andrew looked at Sharon, gratitude filling his eyes. "It's Claire who changed me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave me a reason to live, a reason to care again. I'll always be grateful for that." As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm golden light over the garden, Claire stood up and took Andrew's hand, her face set with determination. "Andrew," she said, her voice steady, "when I grow up, I want to be like you." He was in awe of her fortitude and strength as he looked down at her. "Claire, you're already brave, stronger than I ever was. I know you'll help more people than you can imagine." Together, they watched the sunset, its colors of pink and orange spreading across the sky. In that instant, the weight of the past, the suffering, the struggles, faded and gave way to a profound, enduring peace. In the days that followed, Andrew became a regular part of Claire's life with the Jenkins. He attended her school events, celebrated her accomplishments, and became her biggest supporter, watching with pride as she grew into a confident, compassionate young woman. Over the years, Claire blossomed, excelling in school, volunteering in the community, and eventually studying social work in college, determined to help other children who had been abandoned or mistreated. Through it all, Andrew remained by her side, a constant presence, a reminder of love and loyalty. Claire blossomed into a young woman filled with kindness and resilience, shaped by the challenges she faced in her early years. When graduation day arrived, she walked across the stage, her gaze scanning the audience until she spotted him. Andrew, her father, in every way that truly mattered. She smiled at him, her eyes expressing pure gratitude, and he felt his heart swell with pride and love. After the ceremony, she found him waiting nearby. He held out a bouquet of wildflowers, her favorite, his face glowing with pride. She wrapped her arms around him in a tight embrace, whispering words of thanks that only he would fully understand. "Andrew," she said softly, stepping back to meet his gaze, "you were my first real family. You're the reason I'm here today." His eyes grew misty, and he smiled. "Claire, you were my family long before I even realized it. You were my reason too." They stood together in the gentle evening light, father and daughter, united by a love that had withstood every hardship and emerged even stronger and brighter. In that moment, Andrew felt his journey was complete. His redemption wasn't found in wealth or success, but in the love of the child who had forever changed his life. Claire was his legacy, his joy, the greatest blessing he could have hoped for, and as he looked at her, he saw not just the girl he had once saved, but the remarkable woman she had become. A woman who would go on to spread hope and warmth to others, just as she had done for him. Together, they walked into the future, hand in hand, knowing they would never truly be alone. They carried each other's love in their hearts, a love that would last a lifetime. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If these emotional stories touched you, make sure to check out the video on your screen right now. It's one you won't want to miss. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you'll always be updated with our latest stories. Thanks again, and see you next time.